Cylee SRS8 Chameleon. God damn it, open. Ooh, there it is. Now this is the Cylee SRS8. It is supposed to be super great for people with a really crappy eyesight. Now when you first open the box, you get this nice little tiny patch. You get some instruction manuals right here, so it's kind of dummy proof. You get a crap ton of different screws for different compatibility sets too. Lens cloth, stickers, and those little tiny tools. I have a torque wrench because I'm not poor. This thing is supposed to be IPX7 waterproof rated. The little boxing itself, honestly, it kind of looks like an airsoft box, but the construction feels fantastic. The window size is going to be 1.04 inches by 0.89. Ew, gross. Metric. The dimensions are going to be made for an RMR type cut. A couple other features right here that it actually says on the box. It is going to be an 8 MOA dot. You have 8 daylight settings, 2 night vision settings, motion deactivated standby, shake awake 5 minutes. 5 minutes of wait time, and then it will shut itself off. That is pretty neat. Can get up to 50,000 hours of battery life, so that is a few years. Adjustment increments are going to be 1 MOA per click. So that is pretty darn neat. Very close to the specs of a Trijicon RMR. Cylee is definitely a Chinesium type brand, but we shall see what is the up and up with this thing. It kind of looks like an old Seymour competition type optic. So that's pretty neat. Let's check it out. Now, what better to put it on than my beautiful Beretta 92X? On a side note, really kind of them to actually give so many different screw sets, especially for so many different firearms manufacturers. Nice of them to have T10s. Man, does that look wonky or what? It's nice of them to actually have a top battery compartment, which makes it super easy. This thing does take 1632 type batteries. Now let's see what this reticle looks like. Good Lord, is that huge. But it is a very crispy dot for an 8 MOA dot. Now first impressions, that looks super duper wonky. My God, does that thing sit super high on that Beretta. Although it sits pretty darn high, that window is actually pretty freaking huge. They are advertising this thing to be competition and also carry use. Let's head on out to the range and see what's up. And we made it out to the range. Before we get started though, go ahead and smash that subscribe button. It really does help out a lot. And hit that like button. It helps out with that algorithm. And we made it to the range and I just zeroed it up at roughly about 15 yards or so. So we're really going to test out the Cylee SRS8 to see how well it actually does perform. The look is actually starting to grow on me. It reminds me of like a old generation PS1 video game. So this is going to be my initial zero that I actually have at the 50 round mark-ish, I want to say. We'll probably do another one on a clean sheet of paper afterwards to see where it's at. I zeroed this thing up at 15 yards. It is super windy outside right now, so it's kind of affected me just a little bit, but it seems to be holding pretty okay. Now, my first initial thoughts, I thought that super high mount would be very cumbersome towards me, but I am picking it up very well and easy. It reminds me of like an SRO. The window size is almost similar to like an SRO, but if you've ever handled like SROs or like the old Seymour optics before, this is very reminiscent of it. Doing some transitions with this thing, I'm not having any issues with it whatsoever. I'm able to acquire multiple targets fairly easy with this large window, and it is going pretty swell for me. I'll be honest, I'm probably not going to use this thing as a concealed carry. It's a little bit too abrupt for me. It does have a lot of sharp points, so it does get in the way a little bit. But as a competition gun or a range gun in general, for something so damn cheap, seems to be working pretty well. I'm roughly about 150 rounds in right now. I am going to complete the 500 rounds to see if it actually does hold zero or not. I am spending a lot more on the ammunition than what the optic is worth, but I want you, the viewers, to see if this optic is viable or not. It is, after all, just another piece of Chinesium. If there are any ammunition sponsors out there, I would greatly appreciate it. Now, in terms of pickup, I've been shooting this thing for a good minute now. Everything is going super swell with it. Surprisingly, you know, it is a big piece of Chinesium. It is working out pretty well, though, for whatever it actually is. You know, everything is going swell with it. Yeah, I missed that last shot. Boo! I like it. For the Cylee is actually doing pretty darn good with my field testing. We are roughly about 300 rounds in right now. So at this point, we are going to do a good old-fashioned little stress test to see how well this thing actually does hold up in general. And it's holding up. It seems like the mounts are still in a good position. I tightened it down to roughly about 17 inch-pounds. I know they say roughly about 15 or so, but whatever. Now, as far as the optic is concerned, that 8 MOA dot is, I thought it'd be a lot fatter, but honestly, it is not bad whatsoever. So we are going to see if that little table banging did anything in terms of that zero hold. Nope, still holding up. Pretty funky, pretty Brad. Yeah, God, it's so disgusting how well this thing's working, my God. So we are roughly about 450 rounds in right now. I only got a couple magazines left of this test phase. It is doing pretty swell. I'm probably gonna do a drop test right before that 500 round cusp, but we'll see how well this thing actually did in general. Alrighty, we are at 15 yards once again. We are at 490 rounds in. We're going to do a re-verification on that zero. Comparing, I was just aiming roughly around this area. It is holding up zero pretty darn well. And checking out this zero right here, if we actually look at the average grouping, it is pretty much holding zero. Last test, we're gonna drop it a few times, bang it up a little bit, and then see if it actually does hold zero after all of that abuse. All right, chamber empty, full magazine. Gonna put this thing on save to see what actually happens with it. I'm gonna do some 5-foot drop tests on all this rocky area to see if it actually does hold up. This feels bad about my Beretta. First drop. No issues whatsoever. It seems to be holding up. No cracks in the glass. Try it again. Definitely scuffed it up a good amount, but the glass is still completely intact. Reticle is still right there. Let's see if it actually did hold zero or not. All right, for this one, I'm just going to be aiming right there, right next to that little piece of paper or something like that. 15 yards once again. Let's check it out. All right, I was pretty much aiming at this area right here as to avoid destroying my backer, but it's holding up zero. Honestly, it seems to be getting better with the zero over time, so that's kind of weird. Pretty neat, what the hell? Alrighty, final thoughts on the Cylee SRS8. Surprisingly good. Ugly as hell though, you know. In terms of looks, I give it a freaking 2 out of 10. Honestly, this thing is butt ugly in my opinion. But in terms of performance and durability, no, freaking Cylee, you might be onto something a little bit. The days of Chinesium being cheap garbage is over. This thing is pretty much holding up pretty darn well. Glass is not broken and held zero the whole time. They really beefed this thing up. So in terms of like carry, it could be a viable option for you. I probably won't carry this thing just mainly because it has too many sharp angles for me. It's probably very comfortable to actually conceal carry, but it will imprint a little bit more in my book. But as far as performance and durability, this thing's basically a cheap SRO that won't break if you drop it. So that's pretty darn neat. But for an RMR footprint that is not going to break the bank whatsoever, super viable. Rating on this thing that I actually have, I'm gonna rate it as exceeds expectations. I would say this thing gets like an 8.5 or 9 out of 10. Pretty darn good, not too bad. The only reason why I gave it the 8.5 and 9 is because it is absolutely ugly. I just don't like the external features whatsoever, but a good, viable performance option. Is it the best optic on the market? Probably not. Is it probably one of the better viable ones that you don't have to worry about whatsoever and it is going to take a beating? Yes, absolutely it is. Me personally, I would still probably use the Holosun 507 comp just mainly because of that larger field of view and lower profile, but it's still a viable option. Like, share, comment, subscribe down below. Let me know what you think I should be doing next. And as always, thanks for stopping by.